Oh hi, welcome back to Black Dot Miniatures and Paints. Kevin coming back to you this week with a Deathwing Dark Angels Dreadnought. So I got a buddy that plays Dark Angels, I think I've talked about him before, and he wanted this Dreadnought painted up Deathwing style. So I'm with it, it's awesome, I love painting the bone color, it's so much better than white, let's get that straight. Definitely good stuff in this video for y'all to check out, so stick with me and let's look at it together. So I received it from him with a black primer already on it, but obviously we want to start from a lighter place than that since we're going with the skeleton bone color. So this is Vallejo's Skeleton Bone Primer. We're just giving this an all over coat, all over the model, getting him to the place we want to start from. From there we'll start establishing our darker tones, our lighter tones. This is essentially just going to be our mid-tone. So next we come through with Zandri Dust. All we're trying to focus on here is just adding a little bit of interest, variety, and contrast to the paint job we've already started working up. So like I said, that last layer was our mid-tone. Now we're coming through and it's just establishing a darker tone where our shadows are going to be. So under the arm, at the bottom of the leg plates where shadows are going to fall, at the bottom of the armor where it's not going to look right for it to just be a bright color. So we'll just go over this, be selective where you place it. Too much goes a long way very quickly. So just be careful with it and take your time. Alright, so now we're coming through with GW's Screaming Skull. All we're doing here is the exact opposite of Zandri does. We're just trying to work up our brightest points, add a little bit of highlight where the sunlight would naturally fall on this model. Then we're moving to just a flat coat. I use Minitaire because it's pretty thin, but whatever flat coat you got, we're going to be doing an oil wash on this guy. So the reason why we want to do the flat coat is to protect some of the paint from being peeled up, being adjusted, messed with in ways that we don't want it to be. He's got some really cool calligraphy on one of his shoulder pads, and we definitely want that to pop. Here we are coming through with Vallejo Metal Color Silver. All we're doing here is just picking out the mechanical parts throughout the model. We're picking out all the leg assembly, essentially. We're picking out his smokestacks, his little grabber claw, anything that is going to be metal on this model. All we're doing is establishing this before we go through with the washes. That way we can have a one-stop shop, give it the same cure time, dry time, and it'll be good to go. So after painting all that stuff silver, for some reason my brown wash completely got deleted. I don't know what happened there. You can kind of see where I established that. We just did that all over the model, cleaned it up with the Q-tip and mineral spirits where we needed to. With this part of it, all we're doing is using a Winsor Newton oil-based paint, thinned it down with mineral spirits, and we're hitting all the mechanical stuff around him. It looks stark, it looks like it's going to be a lot worse than it is, but again, I went too light. That's just unfortunately something that I'm still trying to get a grip on, so don't be afraid whenever it looks really stark. It's going to come out alright. For the gold parts on this model, we're just coming through with GW's Retributer armor, and we're essentially painting by numbers. Okay, this section of it, it's going to be gold. Go through, establish your nice golds. If you have to do 2 layers, do 2 layers, no big deal. There is a lot of gold that I didn't even realize initially all over this model, so just take your time and work your way around it, but all of it's super easily accessible. I have this guide where I can pull the arms off no problem, so super easy accessible. While I got y'all watching me paint this, guys, I just want to say again, thank y'all for checking me out. It really means a lot to me. If you find anything useful in this video, please consider hitting that subscribe button. This is the only reason I'm doing this, so I can sit here and teach people how I do things. I'm not a pro painter, I'm not a white dwarf painter, but it teaches people how I paint something to a tabletop top standard, and it may help someone you know. So again, thank you, and let's get back to it. So when talking to him, you know, with it being Dark Angels, the big question is, do you want green in here? He said, hell yeah, you do you, make it look the way it can, the best it can, so we can have this model on the table. So we decided to do the plasma blaster here, and then we're also going to do the bolter on the other side of the model. All we're doing is just doing 2 thin coats of the Caliban green. It probably wouldn't require 2 coats if we were going over maybe a black or a darker color, but with this really light undertone, we definitely want to give it the time to make a nice opaque layer. We're also going to find the other things around the model, the Aquila and the little laurel on a shoulder pad, and make sure we hit that. Alright, so now we're coming through with Ushabti Bone and we're doing the edge highlighting for this model. No big deal here. This guy is great. This guy has absolutely perfectly nice established lines, edges, all of that you can just hit with the side of your brush. They're easy to get to. It is really no big deal whatsoever, okay? Just come through, hit all the clear, nice edges we have, give that the attention it needs. The one big concern here is overreach with the brush if you're using the side of the brush, okay? So what that means is if you're hitting the side of the brush like I am there, and you extend the tip maybe a little bit too far, and you start painting the shit behind it. So just be careful with that, be cognizant of that, but if you're paying attention, it's really not a big deal whatsoever. You just knock it out and go from there. So now we're coming through with Abaddon Black. All we're doing is hitting the little hoses between his legs, the hoses on the plasma cannon there, and any other bits that we need to be black on this model. This is just simple paint by number stuff. We're filling in the color code block here, and that's it. So just make sure you have it to an opaque layer. If it is a little bit, spotty, splotchy, what have you, just give it the time it needs. Go through, hit it again, and give it that second coat. It'll turn out great. And that's really the biggest thing with these models, man. Take your time, enjoy your hobby. That's all this is sitting down, putting paint on because we enjoy it. If we didn't enjoy it, we wouldn't be doing this shit because it is time consuming and tedious. So on to Khorne Red for the purity seals. Nothing crazy here. We're just picking out the 3 little purity seals around his body. We're giving those a nice coat of Khorne Red. That way they have a nice place to start from with the recesses. We'll come through and we'll highlight those up to make them stand out and pop a little bit more, but this will at least give us a nice starting place and we can work from there. For the purity seal here, to start highlighting it, all we're doing is cutting in a circle around the lip of the purity seal, and we're just plopping a little dot of red on the top of the skull just to make it stand out like it's catching a little bit more sunlight. Then we move on to Warpstone Glow. Exact same process as before. All we're doing here is highlighting up the tips of the leaves on the laurel, the edge highlights on the Aquila here, and we're also going to go through and edge highlight all of the plasma cannon components. Now we are going to do a nice OSL effect on the plasma cannon later just to give it a glow, so some of this will be covered, but whenever you cover it with a transparent layer, you are going to see the variation underneath that plasma glow that we're going to establish. So I definitely think this is worth the time and energy just so it adds just that oomph to that final product. So these next couple of colors are going to be pretty well rapid fired at you. We're coming through with Agrax. All we're doing is putting a nice contrast into the already established cloth color that we have on the model. No big deal there. Next we move on to Wild Rider Red. This is just hitting the very tippy tops of all the highlights we laid down before. We're just working on a smaller percentage than what we had already established with the Mepheston Red. Next we're moving on to Grey Seer. He's got a little Tyrannid skull on him. This is the only white on this model. Again, no big deal. Painting by numbers, filling that one in and we'll shade it later. Next on to Silver. We hit that earlier, but now that we hit the Caliban green, we've got to reestablish some of the silvers we did. I'm just hitting a little bit of the components on the plasma cannon here just to really make them pop out, okay? To shade down our golds, we moved to Reikland Fleshshade. All we're doing is hitting this guy with the Reikland Fleshshade to give it the nice contrast in the recesses. From there we'll go through and highlight those suckers up and make them really pop. But to add the contrast, to add the differentiation between the gold colors especially, we definitely need a wash in there to make it look different and stand out. To highlight up the cloth on the purity seals, we're just coming through with Ushabti Bone. All we're doing here is hitting the raised edges and the very, very bottoms of the purity seals. the color's close enough to what we already established with the skeleton bone that it's not just a stark, awful contrast. So just take your time with that. There's only 3 purity seals on this model, so they go pretty quickly. Now we're on to Liberator Gold. All we're trying to do here is start highlighting up our golds, okay? So with the light coming down, top down, all the highlights are going to be towards the top of each individual piece, or wherever we want the light to show a glint in the metal. So for the leg guards here, all we're doing is hitting where the light would fall, no big deal here. However, on some of the other parts like that sword I did a second ago, that is just where light would glint in the center of the blade and make it look more interesting. To continue on with our highlighting, we come through with Liberator Gold and Runefang Steel mixed 1-to-1. This is a very opaque color, so you can actually go very, very hard with it, and you're not going to notice it just go crazy or look like crap. Metal is extremely forgiving when it comes to wet blending and trying to add a little bit of variety in there, so be brave with it. It's not a big deal. To highlight the metals that we did earlier, we're just coming through with a dry brush of Runefang Steel. He's got so many metal components on the back of him that it is just a breeze to go through and highlight this and cause it to have the glinting effect of metal getting sunlight hitting it directly, okay? So no big deal here, no stress whatsoever here. Now, whenever I did the washing process, it got a little bit darker than I really wanted it to be. It didn't have that same Dark Angel's impactful oomph that it typically has. So here I'm working with a fine airbrush, a very, very fine tip, and I'm working with high PSI because I really want it to come out as a fine mist. Whenever I'm trying to direct where it's going and I'm not sure about it, you'll see me spray onto my finger here, and then we'll move the spray stream from there onto the model to make sure that I get a nice effect where I want it to be. We're also throwing a highlight in the center of his chest here, again, just to add variety to it. So like I said earlier, we are hitting this guy with a nice OSL effect here on the plasma cannon. So it's actually super simple, okay? All we do to start with is hit this guy with a nice layer of Mccragge blue. This is a great blue for doing plasma coils and the OSL glow effect. So we'll start there. From there we move on to Indigo Ink through the airbrush. This is a nice dark, deep, rich blue. All we're doing is putting that on all over, essentially. We're just doing a circular area where light would glow out, and as it gets further away from the source, it would just be a little bit darker, right? So we hit this with the Indigo Ink. We kind of go about midway down the airbrush, kind of hit some of the areas around his shoulder pad and onto the body carapace itself. Nothing crazy here. From there we move to Indigo Ink and White Ink mixed 2-to-1. This is a nice rust gray color, and we're just blowing this through the airbrush for the nice blends that it really helps establish. Then we bump up the ink saturation on the white side, make it even brighter, okay? We're just working in a smaller circular pattern from what we had already established. The final bit that we're going to do is come through with just pure white ink, and we're going to blop a circle right down in the center of these coils to make it look like it's glowing bright hot. Alright guys, so here's our finished product. I think this dude turned out great. I really love the way the OSL effect turned out on him. I think that is just awesome, and it's really no work for such a cool effect. My buddy's super happy with it. He can't complain at all, but again, he gets his paint jobs for free, so dude can't complain whatsoever. So again, I'm super happy I was able to bring this to you. It turned out great. I'm jacked and tan about it. So thanks guys for watching. Thanks for checking this out. This has been Kevin with Black Dot Miniatures and Paints. If you found something you liked in this video, please leave a like, comment, subscribe, share this video if you got someone trying to do some Deathwing stuff, because this is all directly applicable to Deathwing Terminators, Deathwing, anything that you can have for Dark Angels. So thanks again, and we'll catch y'all next time. Bye for now.